I'm Travis Bader, and this is the Silvercore Podcast. Silvercore has been providing its members with the skills and knowledge necessary to be confident and proficient in the outdoors for over 20 years, and we make it easier for people to deepen their connection to the natural world. If you enjoy the positive and educational content we provide, please let others know by sharing, commenting, and following so that you can join in on everything that Silvercore stands for. If you'd like to learn more about becoming a member of the Silvercore Club and community, visit our website at silvercore.ca.
What a beautiful studio.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a bit of work, and it's still a work in progress, but it's a little different from the last time you were here, hey?
Yeah. It was equally as nice, but it's just, you can tell there was some serious step up that occurred here.
Little by little, it's a learning process.
Yeah.
So if you don't recognize the voice yet, I'm sitting down with Seb Lavoie once again. He's been on the Silvercore podcast a couple of times now, and we were both really excited talking about being on this podcast again. We're both pushing ourselves in similar ways, and some ways that are maybe a little bit different, and we thought there's going to be some value in us at least talking about this between the two of us. And if at the end of this episode we feel that the value is there for you, that'll be why you're listening to it. Seb, welcome back to the Silvercore Podcast.
I like that. If you like what you hear, you get to hear it. Otherwise, it just never happened.
That's the beauty about being able to edit and take care of these things. Now, before we get rolling too far, I do have to thank you for the geography and geopolitical lessons that you provided me. I'm like, man, it's been winter for a while. It's pretty cold. I want to go someplace warm. Haiti's got some cheap prices. Who do I know who's been to Haiti? Seb, what's Haiti like?
Yeah. It's an incredible tourist destination at the moment. Situation in Haiti is, I would say, catastrophic from a humanitarian standpoint. That is a fact, and that is a UN essentially statement, not a Seb Lavoie statement.
Mm-hmm.
If I was to put it in a nutshell, what we have is a Port-au-Prince, the capital of Haiti, is controlled almost entirely by gangs. We're looking at 60 to, depending where you look, there's statements of 60 to 75% in gang controls. We are talking about armed gangs, and we are talking about heavily armed gangs with leaders from, former military leaders that are now leading those gangs that have, tactics, techniques, and procedures, and they're imposing their wills on the populations. The, rape levels, the abduction levels has been over 1,500 abductions in a year span of locals for ransom and a ton of ransom money put back into the gangs, which in terms, evidently escalates the violence. There is a pandemic, a cholera, as if they didn't have enough going on. They have a major pandemic, which is also affecting people at an unprecedented rate. They've had, and I can't remember what the numbers are, but astronomical amount of deaths. I think it's 10,000, something like that, over the last 2 years.
So there I am with my finger hovering over the clicking enter button, thinking, oh, man, the price looks so good, and man, it looks beautiful from the brochures. Thank you. Thank you for that quick heads up, because clearly I haven't been tracking the news on that one, and there is clearly a reason why it was so affordable. But we've planned something different.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking the other day about a number of things, and one of the things was talking about our struggles or posting our struggles, because you've got a real Superman, larger than life persona. You're fit. You've got quite the background. You're very outspoken, very intelligent, public speaker, and people will often take a look at somebody such as yourself as having all of the answers. And I was talking with Mark Kenyon, and he's got a popular podcast called Wired to Hunt, and he's on Netflix, on Meat Eater, and he says, I know the formula. I know the formula to growing on social media, and you can put out this sort of superhuman, I'm always out there doing the hardcore stuff, never fail kind of persona. He says, but it just wasn't me. And I found that when I started posting some of my failures without complaining about them, some of my struggles and solutions that I was looking towards, it massively increased my relatability, my exposure. And that was, I thought that was kind of a neat thing, because quite often people are very afraid to talk about their failures. And on the other side, some people just jump right into it and it just becomes them. And it's a constant gripe fest. And it's going to be a difficult thing to kind of balance. But what were your thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting from a sort of a scholarly standpoint. I would love to look into, was the fact that he posted about his struggles directly correlated or a direct cause of his social media growing, or simply being in line with who he is and being himself? Because those two things are evidently, we're trying to put the best foot forward as we are posting on social media, and that's something that's natural, and we're trying to be positive also, so you're not trying to go down those negative drains necessarily. But I would be curious to see if just him making the decision of being real and being him could have had that impact, or if it's truly the fact that, or maybe it's a combination of both, and it's likely that that's the case, right? Right. It's a combination of him actually coming out into himself and being the person that he is, the incredible person that he is, and also it brought some relatability. And humans, there's some really interesting things that happen when we start seeing people that we look up to especially struggle with certain things and address those things. It gives us not only a roadmap to how it can be addressed in our own lives, but it also shows us that they're human and they're experiencing the same struggles that we have. And so it's no longer about being a victim. It's about, okay, there are other people out there that experience the things that I'm going through, and what are they actually doing for, remedying those situations? And if those people are people that you just so happen to be looking up to. And I don't really like the look up kind of thing, because evidently somebody can be looked up to in a certain area and necessarily not in another one.
Sure.
Based on how they're acting or based on. But we're talking about a snippet,
right?
Of,
Exactly.
of the image, right?
Who do you look up to?
Lots of people.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I take the good out of everyone. I look up to you a lot. Like I look up to you, I look up to Shaun Taylor, I look up to everybody who goes out there and does something positive and does it on account of the collective, if that's even, something we can, and it is certainly something that we can look at.
The collective?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So anybody who steps up, anybody who's pushing themselves outside their comfort zone, anybody who's seeking excellence, personal excellence, and anybody who's not only seeking personal excellence, but also brings people along the way with them. We know a lot of high achievers.
Yes.
How many people did they help achieve success? That is a critical piece for me.
It's not what you know, it's who you know, has often been said in the past. And if it's the who you know, who is it that you're surrounding yourself with? And I find those, and we've talked about this before in the podcast, it's come up, people say, well, I've got to work on me first. And they give the airplane analogy. You got to get the mask on yourself before you can help others. And I find people get so tunnel visioned in this idea that they have to be perfect before they can help others, that they overlook the reality that once you make yourself of service to others and you're able to recognize how you can assist the right people out there do better, you will do better. And you'll feel better, and you'll get so much more back out of that than you ever would by constantly working on yourself just in your own little echo chamber.
Yeah, and I can make a metaphorical connection with a variety of different things, whether it be firearms training or Brazilian jiu-jitsu or martial arts or whatever the case may be. I've never once wanted to be an instructor and teaching others, not because I didn't care to teach others, but because I was wanting this, the one thing that I wanted it to be a hobby without turning into a job, because I have a tendency to do that.
Yes.
So I was, and I sure I did, right? I did anyways
Yeah.
in the end, having a martial arts studios. But at the end of the day, as a purple belt, I had a bunch of years behind me on the mats, and I had never taught anything. And I had no interest of doing so. I fell into it by accident when somebody that was leading a class in a law enforcement context departed, and they asked me if I could run a class for them, and they loved that class. So I continued doing it. But what I quickly found out is that I was unable, before I started teaching, I was unable to break down specifically what made the mechanisms that I employed to make myself successful in certain situations. When I started articulating everything that I was doing along the way, it started reinforcing those very things that I was doing subconsciously, and it allowed me to actually regain control and be able to replicate those movements, right? So I was able to not only affect the movement in a certain set of circumstances, but I was able to create the circumstances that led to having the ability to conduct that movement.
There are that old saying, those who can do, those who can't teach. And I've heard a variation on that, which is those who can do, those who understand teach. And I know it. One fellow and would rib me because running Silvercore and as a school, and he says, "Oh, those who can do, those who can't teach." And he took over a very successful business and ran it into the ground. And I said, "No, I thought it was those who can do, those who understand teach, those who can't run successful businesses into the ground." And he never said it again after that. But it was that teaching part is something that needs to be balanced as well, because I don't think somebody can be the always teacher without also being the always student.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, being an astute learner is paramount in optimizing the way you teach to begin with, but also optimizing the way you conduct yourself. Because if you end up believing your own hype, and if people are, especially if the hype is real and has some basis of foundation, which is real, and the predisposition to actually start believing it becomes increased, substantially. And so it not only helps you develop as in whatever field of endeavor you're in and continue to get better, pursue that constant pursuit of excellence, but a constant learning, continuous learning, so to speak, but also the other piece, which is keep your feet right on the ground where they should be.
Right, because otherwise you start to lose perspective. And I remember I did a police pistol instructor course with Vancouver Police at the Tactical Training Center a number of years ago, and the lead instructor on that was Staff Sergeant Mark Horsley. Mark Horsley's been on the podcast in the past, and he was successful in shooting the FBI Possible when he was down at Quantico. And they named it the FBI Possible because it's not necessarily impossible. There is a possibility someone can shoot that one clean, and he did, and he got the award for it. But I remember there's two things that really kind of stuck out to me from an instructor standpoint. Number one was, so often you go on courses, and they're basically just student courses, and they're geared kind of towards instructors, and at the end of it, the instructor has to prove that they're at X level, and then they'll pass or not. He says, no, I want to choose people who've already proven that they can operate at a certain ability, and we're going to push you so hard through this one, it'll be a learning process for you. And I remember there's one drill, we're getting back from the target a little bit, and everyone's feeling pretty hot. He says, okay, go into your support hand. Okay, pistol and support hand. Put around to the target, and everyone, tries best, make sure dead center. He's like, okay, put the next hole in that hole, right? And there's a struggle because that's difficult. One-handed support hand, putting it into the same hole. I was successful on that one. I was the only one who was successful, probably by fluke. But the reason for that drill wasn't to show off or see how well someone could do. It's like people who are brand new to this skill are going to be nervous. They're going to have difficulties. They're not going to be that good at it. And it's to refamiliarize somebody who's been out of that learning stage for so long, what it's kind of like to fail and struggle at a new skill. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's a very, very common concept in military special operation, for example, or even in police special operation. I mean, there's only one way to continue to grow, and that's to be uncomfortable. I mean, comfort is where growth goes to die, and we know that. And it sounds like a back of a t-shirt, and the reason why it sounds like a back of a t-shirt is because it should be.
Right.
That's a fact.
Right.
And so how do you do that? You know, you really have to start challenging the status quo, and that begins internally. One of the really interesting conversation to be had with pushing ourselves outside a comfort zone is that if you get too comfortable controlling the parameters around how you push yourself outside of comfort, you actually replicating comfortable behavior in uncomfortable circumstances.
Right.
So you have to be really careful, because if for you being in ice water at 4:00 in the morning for an hour is comfortable, then you know how it is theoretically an uncomfortable thing that you are doing.
Now you're just showing off.
But you're comfortable in it. So
Right.
in order for you to be uncomfortable again, you're going to need to do something that's category or at least drastically different or longer or whatever the case may be.
So what is outside your comfort zone that you've been pushing yourself recently?
I am back to school, pal, after 20 years. Yeah, and higher learnings in a quite the difficult program, and I'm loving every second of it. And it's been, learning to write from an academic standpoint. And it wasn't so much the writing, because I spent 20 years report writing and
Sure.
doing things and writing business cases and those types of things. So the writing itself wasn't the issue. What was the issue is learning the processes surrounding academic papers and how to even study again and how to read documents again, because I've been reading 600 pages of documents a week, right? And so that's a book every week on various subjects, but now you're just not reading to read, and not that I ever read just to read, but
Sure.
I generally read to grasp a concept out of whatever I'm reading.
Right.
But in this case now, I need to have the ability to retain and refer to later down the line in writing academic papers, right?
In that recall. Now that's, the school thing. That would be a challenge. I did college and university and only made it so far to get the credits I needed to apply in the places that I wanted to apply. And school is never a thing for me. I don't know what it was like for you, but I know.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it depends which sort of segment of my life we are talking about, because I don't think that schooling was ever outside the realm of my abilities. I think the problem was me being my own biggest enemy by, letting my focus float away, by being focused on other things, by caring more about other things. And so, but every time I actually applied myself to school, I did well in school. I mean, it can be argued that any time I applied myself properly to anything, I mean, you have to have a degree of success, even if that degree of success is measurable only against yourself, and to somebody else's opinion may not be what it needs to be, but it has to be in relation to you. And so for me, it was all about not completing the program and having the inherent knowledge and experience that will come out of that. It was about, how do I complete this program and become the person that is capable of having the very tough conversation in the various areas of this field of endeavor, and do so with some confidence and some actual backings,
Right.
Like you know what you were talking about, kind of deal.
Speaking about talking about, you've been doing some pretty prestigious talks here. You've been keynote speaker at some places. Is that just a piece of cake for you? Are you just a naturally born public speaker? What? Tell me about this, because they rank that as number one fear for a lot of people is public speaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a very interesting relationship with public speaking. I mean, when I was younger, much younger, and I think we may have spoke about that before. I mean, I got some severe beatings in group settings,
Okay.
and so there was always something there that was lingering, so to speak, and it brought a certain amount of stress to public speaking, but also as a as the only visible minority to grow in a certain area, I had to learn to use speech and jokes and have the ability to connect with people in a verbal sense to be able to survive, really. I mean, it became a survival mechanism for me as a youth. And so there was those two pieces are not mutually exclusive.
Right.
They kind of balanced each other out, so to speak. And so over the years, it became less about natural propensity and what kind of work was I putting in to be ready. So then I took the emotions out of that, essentially, and treated it as a mathematical equation. Like, how am I going to make myself better? No different than what Abraham Lincoln did, for example. I'm not comparing myself to Abe Lincoln, but you're talking about somebody that was a very shaky speaker. That had a lot of challenges, including stuttering and different things. And next thing you know, he's delivered some of the most compelling speeches ever to be delivered, ever to be heard, in the history of humanity, at least recorded humanity.
So you're feeling that the proper prior planning, which prevents piss poor performance, right? The kind of does away with those nerves, or are you still feeling that when you're in there?
Yeah, I still feel them. For me, there's a few things that really help me, and I have a tendency to go blank. I've done that a few times where I will hit the floor and go blank completely. Like, I don't remember why I'm there. What am I supposed to talk about?
I've done that. And it's funny, for me anyways, all of a sudden blank, and all of a sudden you just hear this sort of like, hold on a second. And it's almost like an out-of-body experience. And you're like looking at yourself. I got a way that I work with that. How do you work with that?
Yeah. So for me, when it happens, the biggest predicator of where the rest of this lecture is going to go is my ability to control my premature panic. Because when it happens, it's the most panicking feeling you can possibly feel. Like, you're standing in front of a room of 300, 400, 500 people expecting big things because they heard about you before, or some of their friends heard you speak, or whatever the case may be. And next thing you know, you go blank. The panic that it induces is unmatched. Like, it's very real. And so for me, it's all about premature panic. How am I going to control the premature panic factor? There is no timeline when you get to the front of the room. There is no timeline at which you are expected to start speaking, right? And so for me, that's exactly my coping mechanism. It's, if this happens to me, I will stand there and breathe and start talking about something until whatever it is that I'm supposed to talk about percolates. And I'm going to maintain my cool, calm, and collected demeanor and just have that conversation, initiate the conversation, initiate a bit of bonding. And once I'm getting a bit of positive return, I will ease off. My stress level will go down, and then I will start flowing again.
Right.
What do you do?
Well, I remember one in particular. I was asked to speak at I was up in Whistler. They put me up there, and I was at a private security event. What was it? PIABC, I think. I'm like, I don't know why they want me up here, but there's certain things they want me to talk on. Sure, not a problem. I can do that. And I get up there and I started talking. I was a part of a panel, and all of a sudden, bang, completely blank. And I look around, and the difference was I'd already started talking and I went blank. And I look at my lap, and people start looking at me. And when you're talking about that anxiety, that panic, I found the best possible thing that you can do is not fight it, not fight that panic, not fight that feeling, because the more you fight it, the more it builds on itself. And if you could just say, this is interesting, and you just explore it as it happens. And when you say there's no time limit, you know what? They asked me to be here. I was talking about something. They can wait a minute or so while I collect my thoughts. Another thing I've done in the past as well is just call it right out on the table. And I just said, have you guys ever had an experience where you were on a train and it just crashed and went right off? I'm experiencing that right now. And it'll get a laugh out of everybody. And said, you know what? The overwhelming feeling I'm having right now is, and I'll talk it through, but I'm going to push through. And I'll just tell them that. I'm going to push through. We're going to get ourselves back on track. Will you guys give me that patience, and maybe we'll crack a couple jokes in between? And next thing I know, we're back on track.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one job interview I did, and it was a group interview. First one I did in a group, and it was for a job I really wanted. It was doing promotions for Corona beer at the time, and you get to travel around, and you get a Corona Jeep, and they give you an expense account, and I was, I think, 20 years old, and this is what I want. And they had a jug of water on the table, and I figured, I'll start pouring people some water, and there's 12 people at the table, and then the 3 bosses that were doing the interview. And the first thing I did was spill that jug over everybody.
Oh, God.
What do you guys think of me so far? And everyone starts laughing. I ended up getting the job. And they said it was because of that little thing there, but it could have gone completely differently.
Of course. Yeah, it's really interesting. And one of the things that I think I was able to get out of this as well, to prevent it from reoccurring in the future, is to have a framework around my talk. So what I do now, which I didn't do before and didn't prefer to do before, is to have a few slides. And a lot of the speakers have had slides. I didn't have any slides, and I was kind of winging it, going off the cuffs, which is something that I generally I'm pretty good at.
Right.
And it always pays dividend. In this case, it actually worked out, but it increased my stress to a bit of an unimaginable level. So I was like, okay, you know what? Next time we won't be trying this because I may not be as lucky. I may not have the ability to regain my composure so easily. And so how can I logistically facilitate success in addition to having the backup plan, which is there's no rush for you to speak. Like there isn't. So don't start just, spewing your mouth. Just start talking about something and then go down a road, and it doesn't matter where it takes you. But also, if you have the logistical help that you need, you're less likely to have that happen. Now, what's interesting with this is from a stress perspective, a stress management perspective, if you are prepared and you have a few slides, you are likely to lessen your stress level enough that you don't even experience this. And
That's right.
So preemptively, I could have prevented that.
Right.
Theoretically, I can't prove it now because I haven't done it. But
I've heard that anxiety, panic attacks are some of the worst things that people tend to experience from a psychological perspective, and they feel like they're dying. And when I mentioned before that I will just say, this is interesting, I'm not going to try and stop it, and I'll explore it. Apparently, that's a common tool also used for panic attacks. And they say, where do you feel? What does it feel like? Does it feel like you can't breathe? Does it feel like your heart's beating? Does it feel tight in your chest, right? How far does that feeling extend to? Does it extend larger than you? At some point, where does it feel like it's diminishing? And you explore those little diminishing areas without trying to stop what's actually happening. And a byproduct of that is your brain will start figuring itself out. Maybe I'm not in danger. Maybe I actually know what I'm talking about. I thought that was an interesting little piece of information that was relayed to me.
I was going to sort of bring into the conversation a urban myth, or a rural myth in this case, where an indigenous person told a grandson, about the wolf you feed. So if there's good and bad, and there's a bad wolf and a good wolf in each of us, which one prevails in the end? And it's the one you feed.
Right.
And so I always like this saying in relation to dealing with anxiety or dealing with doubt and uncertainty and those types of things, the things that are hovering above us as humans consistently. But one of the conversation I had, a very insightful conversation I had with a professional mixed martial artist and a champion with numerous title defenses, was how do you, and so it's somebody had told me that person had the ability to absolutely look exactly the same on Sunday afternoon on a stroll in the bush versus entering the cage to lock themselves in there with somebody trained to essentially hurt them for 12 weeks.
Right.
And did so with absolutely no issues. And so I asked him, I said, is it that you don't have any fear at all, or don't have any anxiety or apprehension, or how do you manage to be the person that you are when you go inside the cage, which evidently led to his successful reign as a champion and everything? And he said this. He said, imagine that you enter the cage and there is 4 wolves in there. All your doubts and insecurities and anxiety and potential outcomes are all in this cage. I make eye contact with them, I acknowledge their presence, and I feed them evenly, not one over the other. And so his rationale for saying that was, what is a starving wolf doing? It actually is worse. It comes back swinging. And so his thing was, you need to acknowledge, and metaphorically applicable, evidently.
Sure.
But I thought it was the stuff of genius in terms
I like
of,
that.
Yeah.
I've heard the first one. I've never heard the second one. I think there's a lot of value to that as well, because it's like saying, don't think of pink elephants. Well, what are you thinking of, right? And the more effort you put into not wanting to feed a certain thing, the more it becomes something to contend with.
Sure. Absolutely. And
that.
it's no different than anything else. I mean, if we want to make a very simple correlation with sleeping, for example, the last thing you are going to do if you are trying to sleep is sleep. That is a fact.
Right.
Like, so what do? You flank your brain. You start thinking about other things. You start considering other things. And if there are things that are really truly impacting your sleep regime as a result of like the stress that it creates or whatever, evidently you want to stay away from those things and try to go into other areas where you can do some exploration. But if you focus on sleeping, you are absolutely not sleeping, and that is a fact.
Sleep is such a huge part of your mental well-being.
Of course it is.
I mean, you and I have both been talking on The Collective, and they talk about all things under the sun, the topics thrown at you, and you go into it. And mental health was an overriding sort of topic that seems to be discussed on The Collective. And if anyone listening to this hasn't heard of that yet, I'm going to put links to it in the description, and they can check it out. But the formula seems pretty straightforward in theory, and that's have some form of purpose. And if you don't know what your purpose is, take a look at what your purpose isn't and see if you can weed it out that way. Get some exercise, go for a walk, right? Just get outside, get some exercise, eat well, limit your limit substance abuse, and that could be caffeine, nicotine, drugs, alcohol, technology. People are addicted to their phones and social media. And you kind of marry those things together and it will lead to a healthier lifestyle. And that's, I don't know where I was going with all of that, but.
Well, you're absolutely right. And what we as humans tend to do is to address wellness is in one silo, the wellness silo. Not understanding or not comprehending the fact that this is all interconnected. There is no dissociation going on here. Like if I'm the humans on an emotional standpoint are like pulleys. You pull on one side, something gives. Like it goes like this. It's not. And so in order to keep things in balance, we need to be in balance. And how do we do that? We need to address every single impactful aspect of our lives or as many of them as we possibly can to maximize our wellness overall. So the wellness becomes a symptomology of doing the things correctly in these other areas, not how do I pursue wellness, pursue meaning, pursue excellence, pursue fulfillment, pursue purpose, pursue and have the right relationship and be physically where you need to be, where you ought to be, where you owe yourself to be. To, eat the food that nourishes you, go out in the outdoors and connect with nature, disconnect from the city. Like all of those things contribute hugely to the wellness paradigm. And we need a paradigm shift. I mean, there's no question.
Yeah, they call it urban anxiety, right? People cooped up in the urban anxiety. And we were talking before the show, people saying, well, it's all easy for you to say, Seb. I mean, it's easy for you to go to the gym. It's easy for you to say these things. I would argue perhaps the inverse on that is true. Maybe it's not quite as easy because you've pushed so hard and it's become something that's now a more difficult routine to keep, or you've injured yourself in certain areas, but you're going to go anyways, or you can make those justifications to yourself. I've already been to the gym X amount of times this week. I guess I can afford to, not do it today. What would you say to somebody who says, this is easy for you, Seb?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for taking everything I've ever stood for, and the discipline that I self-imposed to be where I went and to have a certain level of success in the field of endeavor, or my chosen field of endeavor. But also, that's not affecting my performance in life, but it's affecting yours.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you're essentially addressing the problem with a victim mentality, and people don't like to hear that. But if you are a victim, you cannot regain control over a certain situation. If you're a victim, then external factors control and dictate where this goes. Mm-hmm. When in reality, you have a great deal of control over this. And so if you realize, I just exposed a shortcoming, I know I can do better here, and you take ownership of it and you regain control, everything is within your purview. Mm-hmm. What the nefarious sort of path that we can get into is getting addicted to the fact that our inadequacies are creating a certain amount of stress in a neurological sense. Mm-hmm. And if I have a legitimate reason as to why I didn't do certain things, I remove some of the stressors from my neurological system, which makes me temporarily feel better about myself and justifies the reason why I'm living the way I am. The problem with that is that this voluntary exposure that you could benefit from is not occurring, and so therefore you can rest assured that at some point you will get involuntarily exposed, and when you do, it will not be on your own terms. It will be on life's terms, and you may not like the terms.
I like the thought process that I see becoming more and more prevalent. And it's one of these things, is it becoming more prevalent in society, or is it something that I'm seeing more and more in the same way that if you get a new vehicle and all of a sudden you see that new vehicle all over the road, right? But there's a British comedian, and I think he's been kind of doing the rounds on social media and YouTube, and he was I think it was a school debate system, and they asked him to speak, and essentially the crux of his point that he put across, and he put it across as most Brits do in a very eloquent way, was one of the greatest travesties of our current culture and our current kind of woke mentality is this victim mentality and the feeling that people do not have the ability to make change in their own lives. There's always a reason for it. It's because of systemic racism. It's because of gender or your socioeconomic role in society, whatever it might be. There's a reason. And that removes the impetus from the individual from feeling that they have any sort of power over making change to themselves. And that pendulum swing I see it happening more and more. And it's something that you preach loud and clear, is we all have the power to affect the change that we want to see in our life. I like that.
Yeah, I think part of this paradigm shift has been some key figures that have had some success. And so anybody who operated in a field where there's nobody to look at when you fail already understood those concepts and applied those concepts to their own lives. The majority of those people are no longer in combat, right? So now we have a wealth of knowledge that just exfilled from Afghanistan and Iraq, and I, they're not the only ones. Obviously,
sure.
There's people in non-combat role, there's people that non-military that adhered and had this as a foundational basis. But I think what we are seeing is the Jocko Willink and the David Goggins and all those guys, having books that are successful and explaining how they achieve a certain level of success. And at the forefront of this is often the killing the victim, right? But it's no news to anybody who spent any time in those fields. Mm-hmm. When you have the luxury of being a victim, is when this gets dangerous.
So you run mental health walks. And when I say you run, it's something that you've championed and you've put forward, but there's others that are helping out and others who are attending as well. And I think if I'm not mistaken, there's other mental health walks that are happening that were inspired by what you've been doing. But there are so many different causes in the world and that a person can get attached to. Typically, somebody will champion something that speaks personally to them or that they've been affected by in some way, shape, or form. Can you tell me a little bit about the impetus for these mental health walks and what you've seen, the effects of it, and where you see it going in the future?
Yeah, I mean, one of the best ways for myself, and I'm not going to impose this on everybody else because not everybody has the same coping mechanisms. But for me, a lot of the stress relief and a lot of the sort of, I don't want to say venting, but a lot of the time that, okay, so I spent my entire career dealing with critical incidents.
Yes.
Right? My entire career, and I wasn't only dealing with them from an internal perspective as a person involved in those critical incidents, but also as a perspective of a leader. So even if it wasn't me, the people that say worked for me that were asked to go back over and over and over in critical incidents. And so there was an absolutely critical piece here, which was, how am I going to help my people to come to work, go to work, continue going to work, continue addressing the types of calls that we were dealing with, continue doing the things that we do and remain healthy? How are their family units remaining healthy? How's their kids remaining healthy? All those things. So mental wellness was at the forefront of how we conducted business, and we didn't have a choice in that matter. Like, we didn't. If we didn't, we would have fallen apart at the seams. And so then there's two ways you can look at this. What can my organization do to make things better? What can this other person or that person or which program can do which for who, and what am I actually doing? Now, take all of the external factors out of the way. Have I optimized what I can be doing on my own? And if I can, and if I have optimized it, now where do I go next to get some additional help from the external world? Whereas for me, it's always the same. How can I make things better? It isn't going to be perfect. If you're waiting for the perfect plan, you might as well never start anything because it doesn't work that way. That's why some people love the saying, jump out of an airplane and build a parachute on the way down, as long as you have the right components.
Sure. Yeah.
And that was and for me, it was very, very therapeutic to go out in nature, connect with nature. In fact, it still is strongly impacting of my behaviors. Last week, for example, like, I'm not somebody that's overly prone to anxiety, but I am, human, and I experience anxiety, and sometimes more than others, and especially if I'm embarking on a journey that has a lot of unknowns, such as school right now, and some of the work I have to push out, those types of things. In addition to my, financial situation, which is self-generated, unlike before when a paycheck was coming regularly, those types of things. So the stress can really impact you. And last week I woke up, one of those days I was in Washington, Mount Rainier, in a little cabin in the woods with my dogs, and I just loved every minute of it. But one morning I woke up and I was very anxious for whatever reason, and I didn't exactly put my finger on what those reasons were, and I think it's probably compounding issues that a lot. I had a lot of stuff going on. A lot of things was in need of me to be addressing, so to speak. And so, anyways, I acknowledged the feeling. I told my girlfriend. I said, "Look, it's weird this morning. I have this anxiety, which I normally don't really have.
Right.
Let's go out in nature. Let's go connect. Let's go do some training with the dogs and see where it takes us." And she's like, "Absolutely." So we went out to waterfalls, and I spent the day exploring this amazing waterfall. Took my dog there. We did all kinds of work together. We took some shots. We had some great conversations, and I came out of there a completely different human. Completely different. We are talking a full 100% recharge, ready to take on the world, not just, I feel better than I did this morning. And so the problem is trying to convince people that the simplest things are often the things that can help you the most is like the most difficult task because everybody thinks there has to be a complex roadmap to dealing with issues. Otherwise, if it wasn't the case, why isn't anybody else doing it?
Right. Or a magic pill, or
precisely. And so for me, the question came, is there anything I can be doing to help the collective based on my skills, knowledge, and abilities and years of experience in managing mental wellness? And can this something be effectively implemented without, logistical support, financial backing, and all those things? And is there something that can be done? And the answer is absolutely it can. And we did. And it is working. Can I present an empirically database or data analysis? No, I can't show you a data analysis, but I can tell you with all the people that have participated in the walks that have been coming regularly and the impact that it has on their life. So one of the danger of database analysis is that if you don't have that, you automatically lose credibility, which isn't always the case at all.
Totally not.
Like, you can call it anecdotal if you want, but if 200, 300, 600 people show up for walks regularly, at
there's
different intervals, and they're coming back and feeding you, the feedback loop is always the same, and the consistency that you're able to establish within those anecdotal accounts is undeniable, and that's precisely what happened. It's been undeniable.
I hear back from people who've been on these walks. A friend of mine lost his father and dealing with his own things, but he says, those walks were a huge step for him in being able to center himself. And I think a part of that is just the community that you're surrounding yourself with, and the ability for you to recognize that it's okay to be feeling these certain things. Not everything's going to be picture perfect, like what is shown in some Instagram or social media posts. And there's others out here who are taking steps to being better themselves, and they want to see me be better as well. I think that community aspect of what you've been building exceeds just being outdoors and communing with nature. And that's a huge part, being outdoors and communing with nature. But that community that you're building, where do you see next steps for that community?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. So there's the part of me that's dreaming about certain things, that's dreaming in a realistic way to perhaps some of the initiatives that I would love to see implemented by myself over the course of my lifetime. Amongst those things is a trauma center for first responders, is, equine therapy for first responders. And in fact, I don't think I'd be denying anybody. But anyways, for the sake of the conversation, it's my target audience would be first responders, the people that are put through certain difficult situations and asked to go back over and over and over and over again because the rates of occupational stress injury, the rates of lives that are destroyed by the constant exposure is absolutely catastrophic, and the reaction from the either Veterans Affair or is obviously not in line with what it should be for what we ask these people to do. And so if you're a veteran that went overseas and did work on account of the collective for something that you were asked to do, an extremely difficult something that most people couldn't fathom, you return to your country only to be suggested MAID, which has been the case here in Canada, is absolutely preposterous, and it's absolutely unacceptable as a society. It can never happen.
It's really strange that it is being suggested. It is happening, and it's a testament to, I guess, the way people think about things currently, or those who are running the programs are thinking about things, and it's the wrong way. When we talk about surrounding ourselves with positive people, we were talking off air prior about, I think you said there's a study about millionaires, and they hang around with, they tend to have a disproportionate number of millionaire friends compared to others. I so growing up, I went through a number of different schools and a number of different high schools. I went to a couple of private schools in there, so I got a chance to see what the posh private school life was like, what the public school system was like. I was in the worst rated school for British Columbia at one point. And the one thing that I was left with is not necessarily that a private school is going to be offering a better education, because some of the public schools offer just fantastic education programs. It's not necessary that they're going to have better access to equipment or resources. They likely might, just based on the affluent individuals who are drawn to it. But the one thing that it seems to do is it surrounds people with other people who come from backgrounds of success, if they're able to afford that sort of lifestyle. And it kind of just ingrains into them the expectation of success in themselves. And I found those sort of connections and those sort of expectations that somebody can develop at a younger age, and it doesn't have to be young. They can be old when they start changing the expectations for themselves. Makes a world of a difference in the outcome of a person's future.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And compounded with that is the observation, that like the direct observation of the success mechanisms being enacted by the people that you're surrounded with.
Right.
Like you actually get to not only be around successful people, but you get to see them react to situation and interact with life. Mm-hmm. And that teaches you things. Mm-hmm. It teaches you things. It teaches you perspective. It teaches you having a positive outlook. It teaches you about yourself. It teaches you about some of your shortcomings. It just teaches you everything you need to know to be successful. And so the problem with that is you can also surround yourself with the wrong group. And there's areas that are problematic in there, in that you're either at the top of the heap, and if you're at the top of the heap, guess what? You're going nowhere.
Right.
As they often say, if you're at the top of the heap and you're surrounded by people that are quote unquote lower than you, and I just mean from a whatever measure of success you self-impose, then you're not growing out of that at all. You're not challenging yourself. And so we're back to the comfort zone as previously discussed.
Who wants to be king of the losers?
Exactly. Right? Exactly. And some people do.
Mm-hmm. Right.
and thank God for them, so the other people can go to the top.
Right.
Hopefully the right people. But yeah, it's really interesting. It gives you, and I think one of the traps of being a human being is to think that whatever it is that we are facing is unique. Mm. There is no way it's the case. It isn't the case at all. Like I can sit here all day and speak about how horrible my life was and how much adversity I faced and everything. There's always, and it's not about invalidating some of the adversity that I went through, those types. Acknowledging it is fine, but it's important to have a realistic perspective and to realize that there's people out there that have it 10 times, 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 times worse than you, and they still are able to do some of the things that you probably should do. Mm-hmm. And so, and again, that sort of speaks to killing the victim, right? Like I'm taking ownership of this. It's like, listen, yeah, my life was difficult, whatever the case may be. This is the prospect I was dealt with. There's nothing I could have done to change it. It's in the past. There's nothing I can do to change it. Mm-hmm. But what I can do is regain control of where I'm going and how I'm doing it and who I surround myself with as I'm proceeding towards.
And that perspective, that change in perspective that people can get, I think is hugely important. Coming from a difficult background, and everyone's going to have difficulties of one type or another. Their difficulties should never be measured against somebody else, because people are going to have different mental makeup, personality types, life experiences that will make them think that there's going to be a different outcome or cause different levels of possible anxiety. But that the perspective on your on the difficulties that somebody may encounter, to look back and say, you know what? Yeah, it was tough. But look here I am now. And I wouldn't change that for anything. Because if I changed those things and I didn't have those difficulties thrown at me, would I be where I am now? And if I didn't have those low moments, would I really be able to compare what a high moment feels like? And I think that's, there's when we did our last podcast together, do you remember what I titled it? Probably not, but I think it was The Plugging Away Will Win You the Day.
Yes.
Do you know why I titled it that? So that was the overriding sense that I get from you. And it's based on a poem by Robert William Service, the Bard of the Yukon. I don't know if people know this one. Do you want to hear it?
Yes, I would love to.
We'll see if I can. So Robert Service wrote a poem called The Quitter. And it goes, if I can remember this, it goes, when you're lost in the wild and you're scared as a child and death looks you bang in the eye, when you're sore as a boil, it's according to Hoyle to cock your revolver and die. But the code of a man says fight all you can, and self-disillusion is barred. In hunger and woe, it's so easy to blow, it's a hell served for breakfast that's hard. You're sick of the game? Well, that's a shame. You're young and you're brave and you're bright. You've had a raw deal? I know. Don't squeal. Buck up, do your damnedest and fight. It's the plugging away that'll win you the day. Don't be a piker, old pard. Just draw on your grit. It's so easy to quit. It's a hell served for breakfast. It's hard. I think I repeated that part there. But he goes on to say, it's easy to cry that you're beaten and die. It's easy to crawfish and crawl. But to fight when all hope's out of sight, why, that's the best game of them all. And though you come out of each grueling bout all broken and beaten and scarred, just have one more try. It's dead easy to die. It's the keeping on living that's hard.
Wow.
I can't believe I remember that one, actually.
I can't remember it either. In fact, is there a prompter behind me?
I know.
Some prompter.
But that was the overriding sense that I got from you, and I thought, that just kind of stuck in the back of my head, and that's why I named the podcast episode that.
I love that, and it has such a visceral and so powerful sort of repercussion, or it can have to have that kind of mentality. I mean, every interaction with adversity from anybody's perspective is for the world to see, and the world is watching, and the people around you, and I'm talking about the people that are actually meaningful. Your kids, your spouse, your friends, the people that have importance in your life, and they're contributors to your life. When they are faced with their own version of adversity, those reactions from the people that they either look up to or love or care for, or whatever the case may be, is massive. What kind of service is this on account of the collective to actually demonstrate the proper behaviors once the what hits the oscillator? And this is and it's easy to speak to theoretical approach to problem solving certain things. It's easy to have, quotes made on the back of or put on the back of T-shirts that you can just regurgitate all day on the social. But at the end of the day, when you're face to face with adversity, how you react will dictate how other people react to adversity when they face it. So it is a social responsibility. It's not just an individual pursuit. And I love that.
So I've got a question. You don't have to answer this.
Yeah.
Why did you move on from the RCMP?
Well, it's a multi-layered answer. So let's start with why I joined in the first place. I joined to be on the emergency response team. I joined to become a team leader on the emergency response team. That is all. That's all I ever joined the force for. That's all I ever wanted to be. That's all I ever wanted to do. Once I achieved this, and I stayed in the position for a long time, and I started feeling like perhaps I should start looking at other things on account of it was taking a massive toll on me to upkeep everything that needed to be upkept, and in addition to my command level things. So we're talking about hands and feet skills, and we're talking about command level knowledge, skills, and experience. and have across a broad range of domain to be setting the tone, so to speak, gets you very tired. And I was at that point where I was starting to be really exhausted. So there was an opportunity for me to move on to another position, and I moved to another position outside the team. That opportunity was one of the best decisions I ever made. And I think well, I would say the hypothesis is that it helped me. This move, actually, my latest move, helped me make the decision, or have the courage to make the decision that I knew was right for me, which was I no longer want to go back to the team because that ship has sailed. I've done what I wanted to do. I've achieved what I wanted to do and more. There is nothing for me to gain. And where do I go next? And if the answer is I was never in for anything else in the first place, and now I'm looking at the prospect of going backwards in the metaphorical sense, if I was to return to the team, which I was set to do, I just simply decided, no, actually, I have enough skills, knowledge, and abilities to make it on my own. I want to go out and explore the world outside of institutionalization. I don't want to be, because I was institutionalized for decades.
Of course.
And so I wanted to see the world through a different lens. Through different lenses, not just a single lens. But when I started school, I started looking at the same problems that I've been looking at for decades from an academic standpoint, or from an historian standpoint, or from whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. And I started seeing, like, look, man, like there is other viewpoints that have value, that are valid, and I think you can get caught up in that loop where you think that your lens is the end-all be-all, and that is the lens by which everybody should view the world. And that's not how this works, and that's not how we become better. So I knew that I could contribute something to the world if I was brave enough, so to speak, to go out on my own and explore the world and look at it through a different lens, so that I could marry up some of the differences and bridge the gap instead of polarizing.
That is extremely powerful. Did you recognize that there were other ways to look at it that while you're in there? And did you have a sort of a guiding light as to what you felt your next step would be, or did you just step out of the plane and start making the parachute on your way down?
I've always been extremely self-aware and also very inquisitive, and so I knew that there ought to be something more to this. It ought to be that there's an inherent bias in what it is that I'm doing, and how will I know if I'm subconsciously biased in a certain set of circumstances, and how can I expose this, and how can I add to the arsenal? And by having different lenses that I can look at the world through. And how can I bring my lens through an academic world, for example? I mean, we're in our cohort in university right now, and when somebody goes on about some utopian idea of how you counter terrorism or how you affect a hostage rescue or whatever the case may be, I'm able to bring an operational reality. So I bring the lens of operational reality to people that have been, in some cases, lifelong academics. And the society that separates his scholars and his warriors.
Sure.
Right? And so for me, it's now becoming something where I know I have something to contribute by way of my skills, knowledge, and experience over the course of the decades that I was involved in this pursuit. But also now I'm able to see the other side of things and bridge that gap. And so I think as I was bridging the gap with the commanding officer of the division as the sergeant major responsible to make sure that we understood what the troops were going through, and to make sure that the troops understood what the commanding officer's office and the executive leadership was dealing with, I've done that now, extrapolated on a higher level, which is, with other humans, basically, and in another field of endeavor, but same, no change. I just want to marry up things. I'm for unity. I want unity. I do not want decisiveness. And there's only one way to achieve that. And that's to be able to be in other people's shoes. You can't achieve that if you stay in your boots and anchor yourself to your positions. You need to explore.
Do you recognize anything that you're doing right now that you need to push harder on? Is there something that you're looking at that maybe is a bit outside your comfort zone, but you realize you're going to have to dig into it? And again, this isn't something that has to be talked about here, but I'm just genuinely curious. Because I might have a difficult time answering a question like that here.
Yeah. It's for me, I think most of my discomfort comes from things that I have to do in order to cement the business in a position where I no longer have to worry about where my next sort of financial gain is going to come from, and I'm not speaking in terms of necessarily. I don't need to be rich or anything like that. That is not what I'm after.
Yeah.
But a certain amount of financial freedom that prevents me from having to ever consider going backwards, which is going back to what I know, going back to the field that I'm. So I add tools to the toolbox so that I am able to move on to go and take other pursuit. Maybe be a professor in university. I would love to do that, and it's already been floated by me. So eventually, that might be in the.
That would be pretty cool.
In the cards. But also, guess what? I am no longer limiting myself to a single course of action because it needs to be run concurrently if we want life to be successful. I can't, for the life of me, do all the things that I want to do in life if I do them back to back. Right? And so right now I'm at a point in my life where I want to get and maximize and optimize my life experience. Like, what have I done? What have I achieved? What have I pursued? What have I learned? I want to, God, if I could get all the knowledge, like, the Matrix style, where you get it injected straight in your brain, I would love that. And so I'm at a point in my life where I want to optimize and maximize the learnings. I want to optimize and maximize my performance in all kinds of various fields. And I want to be as open-minded as I possibly can on my way to doing that or achieving that. And I'll never achieve it. We all know that. But it's a pursuit that matters at the end of the day. And so it's all about not missing out. I have a very, very strong fear of missing out when it comes to life.
The FOMO.
Yeah, but it's like FOMO of how can I optimize this life experience,
Well, there's two ways that you can look at that, right? Whether that be the life experience, whether that be financials, whatever it might be. You either make more or do more, or you accept being happy with less. And either way will lead you to that same spot. That's a difficult conundrum for a striver, though, to say, I know I'm capable of so much more, and I know what I can do can affect other people and it can help them in a very positive way, but I think I'm just going to sit back and be happy with less. That's oftentimes looked at in a negative way by those who strive, but maybe it shouldn't be.
No.
Maybe those who are, maybe that example of being happy with the less is something that's going to be helping other people around you.
Hey, at the end of the day, it's about being you. You do what works for you. You discount what doesn't work for you, or I'd say you vet carefully what you perceive is of no use to you, so that you may still take something out of it and continue going on in whatever path is meaningful and satisfying and purposeful to you. We've had this conversation before where it's so polarized that if somebody is brilliant and says one thing that doesn't jive with your values or whatever, now that person is fully discounted, right? I don't listen to him because he's
said that one thing I hated.
Yeah, exactly. And so for me is, even if you're, and it's funny you should mention that, because I was in a guest speaking appearance in Alberta during a massive Townhouses Realty meeting, hundreds of people, and a beautiful meeting. And incredible leadership from the people at Townhouses. But anyways, I ended up there was a lot of emphasis on financial gain. So, if you want to be a six-figure earner, a seven-figure earner, whatever,
Sure.
there was some pretty astronomical numbers being tossed around that I'm actually, not really a part of at the moment. But what was really interesting is I stepped up in front of the panel at some point and I told the crowd something that surprised them. Being $1 million earner may not be your version of success.
Right.
Period. And if that's the case, don't let other people's meaning of success dictate how you should think and feel about what you feel is successful. Perhaps because there is a cost to any of this. And if you are going to be $1 million earner, you are likely to have an obsession. And if you have an obsession, there are things that are going to have to be put on the back burner because there's only 24 hours in a day. And those things can be your family, friends, relationships, whatever the case may be. And it may not. But at the end of the day, you have to do what means something to you. And you have to do something that you have set forth for yourself, not what other people are evaluating success by. I mean, if that was the case, anybody who isn't making a ton of money would be, by a lot of people's standards, would be essentially they would negate their entire existence on account of they never reach a certain financial freedom or whatever the case may be, which is completely preposterous and also so short-sighted that it's almost, a self-licking ice cream cone as it's once being described.
There is a certain amount of money that people have studied, they've looked at it and said, yeah, money actually does buy happiness.
Sure it can.
Up to a certain level, right? Like if you're not getting food, if you don't have a roof over your head, if there's certain things, if you can't get back and forth to your work, you're not going to be very happy. And there's going to be a downward spiral from there. So at a certain point, when all of those basic needs are met, the addition of money does not have the same exponential benefits towards a person's happiness that many people would place on it. In fact, it can have the inverse effect of making them more and more miserable or amplifying the negative things that are in somebody's life. And, I think most people, the biggest thing that a rich person can have would be to be rich in time, essentially. Financial freedom to be able to choose what you wish to be able to do with your time, I think, is the epitome of being rich.
I am 100% on board with this hypothesis. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. How if the financial situation is in line with the goals of how I want to live my life in a meaningful way, and how I want to explore and how I want to be out in the world and doing certain things, and it's really interesting because there's so many people with victim mentalities, when they're looking at people that are financially successful, there's always a nefarious reason why that's the case. And the fact is, I have met some of the most financially secured people, and they have done more in the financial standpoint in terms of generous donation and whatever the case may be. And yes, there are tax breaks, but that's not what we are talking about. We are talking about people that invested an incredible amount of money that they don't owe anybody on account of helping the collective. So some of the most selfless and caring people I have seen utilize their financial means to help others. And so it's really easy to sort of lump people in the same category on account of the things that we didn't achieve ourselves and see ourselves as victim. Or we can say, if I was where I need to be in a financial sense, could I be even more effective in proliferating whatever goodness it is on account of the collective? And for me, this is always a focal point. And we can have a million conversations, and I will always come back to that. What are you doing for others? What are you doing for others? And if you can't answer that, start.
Where did that drive to do for others? Where did that come from? Did you realize at a young age that your happiness is dependent or codependent on another person's happiness?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's my dependence, that my happiness is codependent. I would say that I've always been in positions where I was on a wrong end of certain situations, and there was never anybody to help. And when there wasn't, and so I'm talking about being a youth here. I'm
Sure.
talking about being, in an environment that wasn't conducive to being the person I was at the time. I wish I was that person, and some of the challenges that came along with that, and some of the exposure to either violence or whatever the case may be. But it was a daily operation, and for me, it was always about, is there anything I can do to help somebody else? And once you have tasted what it feels like to truly and viscerally help somebody in life, in whatever field, in whatever way that you are capable of, there is not a single feeling in the world that beats that.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't a single feeling in the world, a feeling of success that beats having made a positive impact on other people's lives. And I don't care. I kind of don't really care how you look at it. You need to experience it. You kind of need to experience it to feel what it feels like. And then after, it's almost you are going to want to proliferate that. You are going to want to replicate that. You are going to want, and so is some of it self-serving? Absolutely, it is. There's no. I would be sitting here disingenuously telling everybody I'm not doing this for me.
It should be.
It's a part. It's a big part of who I'm doing it for. I am doing it for me. I want to feel good about my contribution to the world. It doesn't need. I don't need to leave a legacy that speaks my name. I do not. But what I need to do is to leave a quiet legacy that continues proliferating goodness. And I don't need to take credit for it. I just need it to continue. And that's something that for me provides my life meaning.
I think there's a lot of value to recognizing what it does for you or for the person who's helping others, because, oftentimes you hear someone say, oh, I keep helping other people and they keep taking advantage of me. Well, if you're coming back and saying that they're taking advantage of you, it's probably because you had an expectation out of that interaction that isn't now being fulfilled. But if you can recognize that your expectation is simply that you get enjoyment out of the fact that you can help others, and it's up to you to be able to choose those people who you wish to help or not. What they do with it afterwards is entirely up to them. If they want to throw it right back in your face and you feel like you're being taken advantage of, well, maybe you're not helping. Maybe you're not doing these things for the reasons that you actually think you're doing it for.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, that's a constant dichotomy, and it's seems to be rampant, and people are very quick to point out on how many humans disappointed them and whatever. And it's like, yeah, humans will disappoint.
Yeah,
that is an absolute fact. And if you get guaranteed of one thing in this life, is that humans will disappoint you. But will you disappoint you? I'm not here to change the world. I'm just here to make sure the world doesn't change me. And that's a very different perspective on things, right?
That should be on your T-shirt.
We're starting a T-shirt line.
I actually went out. I think I mentioned it to you before. When I was a teenager, I had this idea. They had these no fear T-shirts everyone was wearing. I was like, they should make one that says "Know your limits." N-O your limits, like you have no limits. Anyways, my kids are like, Dad, you can just go on like Zazzle and make your own. So I went ahead and I made my own damn T-shirt. But yeah, I think maybe people listening, you want to see one of those on a T-shirt? Let us know. We can make it happen.
We'll do a collaborated project between Raven Strategic and Silvercore.
Absolutely. New T-shirt line. It's like Harley Davidson. They're the most successful T-shirt company out there, right?
Yeah, it's and this is, man, humans are hurting. Like, I think we are vastly underestimated how much humans are hurting. Vastly underestimated.
On what level do you think?
I mean, from a just a meaning of life standpoint, just from a emotional and mental standpoint, just from, like, we are, it's completely insane. And who isn't? People that are consistently fraught with adversity, people that are consistently confronted by it. I was in Haiti, as you mentioned, as you alluded to earlier, not on a personal vacation with my family.
With your family,
and
yes.
my in
the cheap seats.
Pomeranian frou-frou. But But I was in Haiti doing some work, and I had a conversation, a very insightful conversation with some of the people I was working with, and asked. I spoke to mental wellness and suicide, and the conversation inherently went a little weird as people were looking at me going, why are people killing themselves? So I'm thinking, okay, there's a few reasons why these guys would be completely oblivious to this. It's either they're messing with me, or it's taboo to the point where they don't want to talk about it, or they're privileged and they haven't been exposed to it. So
Right.
which one is it? So I started doing some research on some of the sites, the peer-reviewed sites where we have a lot of academic material. And I started reading, and I found that Haiti actually has a 7% per 100,000 people lower suicide rate than in America, than in the States and Canada.
Interesting.
And I'm like, okay, let me get this straight into my head. So what we have here, and by the time I was done in Haiti, I've spoken to people, to 18-year-old that have spent hours with dead bodies in front of their house, that have seen all kinds of violence proliferated against civilians, that have seen all kinds of deaths and murder and, whatever the case may be, and yet have no concept of why would someone even consider taking their own lives. And we take this and bring it over America now, and we have the most comfortable lifestyle we've ever had. We minimize the amount of adversity that we encounter on a daily. And in fact, most of our lives are without adversity for the most part. And our suicide rates are skyrocketing, right?
People don't have that adversity. They don't know how to deal with it. E.H. Chapin would say, out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. The most massive characters are seared with scars.
Absolutely.
And that would speak to that. That is so interesting.
Yeah, so it was a very telling, consequentially speaking. Now, how does this, and so what I do with this information is, okay, well, we're not changing the way we live in North America, and this isn't going to happen, so this is unrealistic. But how is this now applicable to my own life, and how can I look at how I conduct business on account of having that in the back of my mind? So I'll give you an example of this. As parents do, I'm no different, trying to prevent my kids sometimes from experiencing some of the things that made me the person I am today. And to a certain extent, there is value in that because I am lucky to have turned out the way I have. It's not just that what I experience is what I experience in an amalgamation of countless other factors that made me successful in that endeavor. But had I been of different temperament, had I had different social experiences, it could have went the other way. And so I digress. But what I was going on with this is essentially, if I remove all the adversity to my kids in my kids' life, what kind of tools am I giving them? And that's helicopter style parenting is very common here in the West.
Or
Very
lawn
common.
mowing, where you go in front and you take care of all the problems
100%.
before they even
Sure.
show up.
Sure. And this to me was an sort of an exploratory tour into how are these people so resilient, and how can they keep a positive outlook on account of the circumstances. And don't get me wrong, I'm there for a week, 10 days, and then I'm out. If everything goes well, which evidently it did because I'm here. But it had me question everything. The way I conduct business with my kids, to make sure that I'm not overprotecting them, but also that I'm evidently not endangering them, so to speak, willfully anyways. And yeah.
I remember a friend of mine in high school, he looks at me and says, "Man, you're so lucky, Trav." So why is that? Well, look at all these issues you've had. Look at these problems. Look at this adversity you've had. He says, my parents are well off, and I've never had any problems in my entire life, and I'm resentful towards my parents. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're resentful that you've been provided, like they've looked at what would be optimal for you, and they've provided everything they think you can, but yet it doesn't matter where you come from, it seems people will look back and look for reasons to be resentful. And he would try and seek out adversity in some weird ways just so that he can have a little bit more life experience. Maybe in one way he recognized the fact that there is value in suffering. There is value in pain. There's value to adversity. And at that point, I looked at him and said, man, you're stupid. I mean, you've got everything. You've got it all set up. Why are you so upset? Who knows? Maybe there's a lesson there somewhere in a happy medium between those two thought processes.
Yeah, there's no arguing that it has to be a measured approach. I mean, there is a cost to benefit ratio. And there is no known algorithm for this, and I'm sure it can be quantified, and it's difficult. But if I look at, for example, the group that I was with in Haiti, yes, their resilience was up, but also the meaning of life was lower, right? And so there is a cost associated with this, and you can't discount that cost. But what we do know is we are talking about an extreme here. We're talking about an extreme to another extreme. Right? And so generally, as is normally the case, the best place to be is generally in the middle somewhere in a measured approach. And so, but it's good. I mean, having and being exposed to that kind of circumstance and experience it sort of firsthand, like just being in country on the ground and actually having to be mindful that things can go majorly sideways quickly, and having contingencies to deal with that and whatever brings a dose of reality back into my life and drag me out of my comfortable lifestyle. But it also, having the interaction with the locals and having the conversations also shows me that there is value in this, which we already know anyways. And so now is, how do I maximize and optimize the experience by bringing this back to my country, and how does this impact future speaking engagement, future coaching engagement, future parenting ventures, etc.
And that's interesting, the constant thought process of how we use this for growth, how we can use this for financial growth, for personal freedom, for surrounding ourselves with people that are going to be positive influences and assist us in that endeavor. I keep kind of going back to that other thing that we're talking about financial freedom, giving you the freedom of time. And, I grew up, almost all of my clothing was hand-me-downs from other people's older kids. My toys, Jimmy Hull would say on most of my toys, Bob Hull, he was head of the JIBC Police Academy for quite some time, but came from a very different mindset and relationship with money and time and what I valued. And when I figured I'm going to start my own business, I had all of these goals and expectations for what I felt were going to be measures of success within that business. And I very, very quickly realized that I don't care about money. And that relationship with money of not caring really allowed me to earn money because I wasn't chasing it. And if I'm chasing something, I'm always going to be behind it. And it's like Rockefeller, when a reporter once asked him, look at how much money you have. Like, when's it enough? How much more do you need to make? He said, just $1 more, right? Always just $1 more. So I took a different approach, and I, at a very early age, looked at what my value structure is and what I hope to be able to achieve. Hasn't been easy, but I'll tell you that the money aspect of it tends to figure itself out. If you're working hard towards something you believe in, it's not work anymore. And if you're bringing value to others, which you very evidently are doing, that will see itself through your hard work and through the value you're bringing. The money just comes.
Yeah, provided that there is an actual plan in place that's viable, and to go along with those amazing qualities.
Oh, your plan, you got a good plan.
Yeah, no, I'm telling you, man. For me right now, if hypothetical world, I'm totally financially free and I don't have to work a day in my life, I would be traveling the world incessantly.
Yeah.
incessantly. Like, I want to go and train everywhere. I want to go to Iceland and spend 3 months there. I want to
I'd
go.
love to go to Iceland.
I know. I'm so going.
Yeah?
That is a fact.
Yeah.
As soon as I graduate from my program, my current program here, I will be heading off.
Reykjavik.
Oh, I want to go in all the other
Yes.
areas, the less known areas, and there's so much beauty and power and oh man, all over the world, and I don't want to miss out on any of it. So I just want to get doing that and continue to, proliferate goodness, but do it around the world.
Is there anything else that we should be chatting about? I think we've talked about we've weathered one power outage, talked about a fair gamut of things here. Anything else we should be?
What have you and I have? Is there anything we've been discussing?
Well, we got some future plans, but I tend to hold those closer to my chest because they, for two reasons. Like, number one, if it doesn't pan out quite the way, you don't want to turn around and look like you're just blowing a lot of hot air. But the other one is there's a dopamine release apparently when you pre-talk about your plans, and it gives you that artificial feeling of accomplishment, which I've come to recognize. So I will talk about it after I've done it. We've got there. You've got some pretty cool plans that you're looking at, and I think there's a couple things we can work together on to be able to help other people out there. And I'm really excited about that. But aside from those ones, I think if people want to, they can tune in, they can follow. We'll put links to your social. We'll put links to your company, so they know where to find you. If you're looking for a keynote speaker at an event, I can't think of anybody better than yourself to be speaking with such life experience and such a powerful message to be sharing. I mean, even just that one that you were doing before, you were the last speaker on that one, I believe.
Yeah.
Tired audience, tired crew. Everyone's like, all right, so we got one more keynote speaker, and you've got the ability to, I mean, you should have been, maybe there's a reason why they put you last, because they knew that you'd be able to get everyone just absolutely amped. So if you're looking for someone to share a life of wisdom built the hard way, there's going to be links in the description here. I think we've covered a fair gamut.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to stick around just to hear the sound of my voice, but I love having conversations with you, and I'm glad we did it again.
Likewise, Seb. Thank you very much.
You are welcome, brother.